So earlier this week on Monday, Hennessy Sports, the promoters of Nick Blackwell, released a statement in which they said that on Saturday, Nick Blackwell was brought out of his medically induced coma, and that by Sunday, he was talking to family and friends and he was sitting up and even joking. So thankfully, Nick Blackwell has seemingly not suffered any serious brain damage at all. And they talked about the extent of his injury, and they were saying that it wasn't actually a bleed on the brain, because there were many contradictory reports. They were saying it wasn't actually a bleed on the brain, but a bleed on the skull. Now, a bleed on the skull, I'm no medical expert, obviously. I'm no neurologist. I'm no brain surgeon. But to my understanding, I think what they may mean by a bleed on the skull is a bleed outside of the, because to my understanding, the brain itself has got a membrane over it, right? Like a protective skin over the brain. And anything outside of that protective layer of, that membrane, that skin, is technically not the brain. Okay, that's my understanding of it. So maybe he had a bleed on that membrane or between that membrane and the skull. I don't know. But whatever the case is, it wasn't as serious as we typically see from, other cases where fighters have these type of head traumas, which is obviously very good for Nick Blackwell. It's good for him and his family. And it's good for boxing because it shows that in Britain, at least, the medical procedures and what have you are top notch. And because of all the first class treatment that Nick Blackwell received, it stands boxing in good stead, I believe, in the UK. It shows that the procedures are on point. So, yeah, it's obviously bad news that Nick Blackwell's career is now over. I'm sure because of the fact that he seemingly hasn't suffered any long-term damage. Because of that, in his own mind, he's going to be thinking, I want to box. And there probably will be, some people might find this alarming, sad even, but there probably will be boxing commissions around the world who are willing to give Nick Blackwell a license. I mean, once that brain injury or, a tissue injury in his skull eventually heals completely, he'll probably be able to pass a brain scan. And in fact, there are probably parts of the world where you don't even need a brain scan to get a boxing license. So knowing the kind of character that Nick Blackwell is, I mean, he's been fighting, I think, all of his adult life. So knowing the kind of character he is, he might try and box. I mean, it must have been a traumatic experience, what he's been through. But I wouldn't be surprised if this guy does try and box again. Now, I have to give a shout out and give a lot of respect to David Haye. I know I criticize David Haye a lot for the shenanigans that he gets up to and what have you, but credit where credit's due. As I always say, no fighter is below praise, no fighter is above criticism. And in this case, David Haye is in for some praise because Nick Blackwell has publicly, this is as far as what we know publicly, has received £65,000 in donations. That's roughly equivalent to about 100,000 US dollars. Okay, very roughly. And 50,000 of those pounds came from David Haye. 15,000 came from other people, but 50,000 came from David Haye. So you got to big up David Haye for that. I'm sure Nick Blackwell has never made anywhere close to 65,000 for any of his fights before. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe he made that for the Eubank Jr. fight, but I seriously doubt it. So yeah, 65,000 will go a long way for Nick Blackwell, particularly rebuilding his life after boxing, because although it seems that he hasn't suffered any long-term, damage in terms of his health, there's going to be a lot of psychological damage there, knowing that he can't box, at least not in the UK. So he's going to have to find a different direction for his life. And he's going to need that 65 grand. He'll be able to maybe at least get a house somewhere, maybe start a business, you know, do whatever he can. Maybe he can build a gym and train fighters with that 65 grand that he's got. So it's obviously some nice compensation for him to hopefully cushion the blow. I mean, even a 65 grand, to be honest with you, because of the way he's dedicated himself to the sport, even a 65 grand ain't going to cushion the blow that much, but it will help some. So big up David Haye for that. And as I say, it's good to see that Nick Blackwell is on the road to making a full recovery. And maybe because of this, and I mentioned this actually previously, I was talking online, you know, typing away to somebody, and I said that the future of British boxing on terrestrial television may hinge on how well Nick Blackwell recovers from this injury. Because if he ends up being disabled like a Gerald McClellan or Michael Watson, then I think that the terrestrial television networks like ITV and Channel 5 in the UK are going to get cold feet again, just like ITV did in the 90s when there was a bunch of tragedies. But I then said, if Nick Blackwell is up and talking and walking around within a week or so, then I don't think it will hurt the sport as much. I think the sport will be able to continue on without, you know, I think terrestrial TV might still be involved with the sport if Nick Blackwell's up and walking and talking within a week or so. And somebody commented and laughed at what I was saying, as if to say that it's impossible for Nick Blackwell to be up, walking and talking within a week or so. Well, actually, he's definitely up and talking, as you can see in the picture, right? Up and talking and laughing and joking as normal. And I'm sure he'll be walking within the next few days if he isn't already. So for those who think that's ridiculous, well, it's obviously not ridiculous, is it? Yeah, so that's all I got to say about this, people. Not exactly a happy ending, but it didn't turn out to be as bad as it could have been. So, you know, that's obviously good for Nick Blackwell and his family and whatnot. So let me know what you think about this whole situation, people. Again, big up David Haye and everyone else as well that contributed to Nick Blackwell's, donations, his fund or whatever. Big up everyone else that contributed to that. All right, it's your boy Hatman, I'm out.